The Chargers made things official over the weekend, signing veteran Bud Dupree to a 2-year contract and now giving the Los Angeles Chargers the best edge group in the NFL.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Drogemeyer. We've been covering the Chargers together now for 8 seasons, but this is our 6th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Happy Mother's Day to all of the mothers out there, and make sure you tell all of your wives, because I had to tell mine a special Happy Mother's Day to my wife, Karina, for little baby Dylan. But thank you to everydayers for checking us out and making us your first listen today. To make sure that you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, what do we got today?
Well, Daniel, we know that the Chargers were talking to Bud Dupree and that he visited. Well, now it is official. The Chargers bring him in. Joe Hortiz gives Jesse Minter another weapon to attack opposing offenses. And rookie minicamp took place over the weekend. So we get to got to hear from some of the rookies there. And, I think Junior Colson's very exciting. He's really sticking out. And Brenden Rice is definitely going to make his mark in the NFL.
Yeah, man, it must be so tough to be Jerry Rice's kid, but it seems like he's handling it exceptionally well. But today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. David, well, we just talked about this, and we talked about how much we would like the move if Joe Hortiz was to go out there and sign Bud Dupree, just because of the depth that it would give them. Insurance for Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack that they haven't had in years past if either of those guys went down. And they did it. According to his agent and Ian Rappaport and others, veteran pass rusher Bud Dupree is signing a 2-year deal with the Chargers worth $6 million base with a max value of $10 million. That's what his source said. That is a pretty good deal. Another deal that does not affect their compensatory pick formula. Joe Hortiz continuing to play the game, continuing to do things differently than we saw in years past under Tom Telesco, and adding to strength. That's what we wanted to see. But most importantly now, David, I think assuming these guys are healthy, obviously, which is a huge if, but 1 through 4, find me a better edge group in the NFL. Like, you might have better duos out there, even though Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa are up there as far as duos go. But when Bud Dupree is your edge rusher 4, find me a better group than that. I don't think there is one.
I don't think so either. And I think, honestly, like, you can legitimately say that 3 out of the 4 of those guys are not only great edge rushers, great pass rushers, but they're excellent run defenders as well. I mean, Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, phenomenal. Tuli Tuipulotu, coming off his rookie season, being one of the better run defenders in the NFL as a rookie. Just absolutely incredible. Bud Dupree, a veteran, a guy that's been in this game a long time, a guy that had 6.5 sacks last year. I mean, I think that's just incredibly exciting. A really great mix in that room. A lot of veterans, a lot of depth. I think that's a scary, scary pass rushing quartet there to get after opposing quarterbacks.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I think that when you're looking at it, it's obviously very contingent on the health of Joey Bosa. I mean, that's a huge part of it. But now, even if you lost Joey, God forbid, early in the season again, you feel so much better about what that room brings to the table, right? Because, I mean, you're talking about a guy in Bud Dupree who has 53 career sacks. I mean, according to PFF, they gave him 8 sacks last year because they don't give half sacks. So, I mean, they said he was responsible for 8 last year. And he's a pretty well-rounded defender as well. I mean, he's not a liability in the run defense department by any means. So, I think especially when you think about what Jim Harbaugh said about Joey Bosa, not afraid to say, hey, he was playing better than Khalil Mack last year before he got hurt, right? So, like, to think about having all 4 of those guys, I mean, has to be something that really, really interests Jesse Minter, the new defensive coordinator. And that is one thing I just have to give Joe Hortiz credit for, is just like continuing to arm him with some weapons. We know this defense has a long way to go, but at the same time, now you have a definitive strength. You have something that says, hey, no matter who we're going up against, we have the advantage here. And I think that's great for Jesse Minter, who is already kind of a genius as far as being able to find ways to get pressure on the quarterback to give him this kind of arsenal of pass rushers.
I mean, I think it's got to be really exciting, being able to transition from the college ranks to the NFL and be able to say, hey, these are some of the things that I need for my defense to excel. to have the pass rushers that he has at his disposal. He can now get really creative with how he deploys those guys and how he, really sets up his defense. I mean, he can kind of, choose which flavor of pass rushers he wants to send after the quarterbacks. And I think that's just going to cause a lot of headaches for opposing offensive coordinators to try to figure out who's coming, where they're coming from, and how they're going to try to stop them.
Well, let's think about what the new NASCAR package looks like, David. I mean, the new NASCAR package, you got all four of those dudes on the field, right? You're getting into third and long situations. You might have Bud Dupree and Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack and Thule all going at the quarterback at the same time, which, I mean, find me an offensive line that's going to be able to stop that consistently. At the same time, you have to get him to third and long. You have to get him into obvious passing situations. So I think the other part of this is just giving the team a strength, knowing that it has some deficiencies, especially on the back end, and a lot of question marks outside of that edge group, right? Because you better hope your defensive interior can stop the run to get into those situations. You better hope that your corners can hold up on the outside so that you're not giving up 7 yards a pop or just getting into these third and long situations and having broken coverages on the back end. So yeah, I think having a pass rush like this, in theory, on paper, helps you cover up some of those deficiencies. It helps Jesse Minter find other ways to get creative and to be able to find ways to make this defense have the turnaround we know it needs to have in 2024 and beyond. Because with Brandon Staley, it never happened. But I wanted to talk about another kind of interesting point that Jeremy Fowler brought up, because according to him, reuniting with the Steelers was a strong consideration for Bud Dupree, but the Chargers sold him on 3 pass rusher sets with him, Khalil Mack, and Joey Bosa. Which is interesting, though, because to me, Bud Dupree is clearly edge 4 for this team. To me, right? I mean, that's not how they see it. Maybe they don't think Thule is the pass rusher that Bud Dupree is, and I think historically, if you're talking about total production, they're absolutely right. But man, I don't know. I don't know if you take Thule off the field in obvious pass rush situations in favor of Bud Dupree. So it was interesting that was kind of the sell job by the team to get him to come to LA.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, it's to him, I think it's, hey, these are 2 guys that are going to be on the outside that are going to open up opportunities for me. Because, I mean, you're definitely not going to want Khalil Mack to wreck the game after he had 17 sacks last year. And when Joey Bosa is on the field and he's right and he's healthy, he's an unstoppable force as well. He's a guy that's really, really difficult to block. So those guys getting after the quarterback is inevitably going to open up more one-on-one opportunities for Bud Dupree to get in there and get after the quarterback and get his sack numbers up. So, I mean, I understand why that thought process is there, but I'm with you. I don't see him as the edge 3 here. I think after, the rookie year that Thule had, he hit a wall a little bit, but I just think as a complete edge player, honestly, I think that Thule's probably a little bit above Bud Dupree in that, particular part of the game.
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, this is only about pass rushing, right?
Yeah.
So you kind of have to take Tuli Tuipulotu being one of the league's best edge run defenders that there is already, right? Maybe even a top 5 run defender at his position in the NFL as a rookie. You take that part out of it. But at the same time, it's hard for me to imagine a 3-man rush with Dupree, Bosa, and Mack is better than the one we saw last year when they had the 3 guys healthy. Because last year, this from Daniel Popper, don't forget, 44 plays with all 3 of their guys last year on the field. 10 sacks. They were sacking the quarterback at a 23% rate. Like, teams don't have 23% pressure rates, let alone having that many of them convert into sacks. I mean, they were a terror. So I think even though Bud Dupree has the pass rush pedigree and the productivity in the past, last year Thule was the better pass rusher, right? Bud Dupree, 75th out of 95, and his pass rush production per PFF, which was 5 out of 95 that had 200 pass rushing snaps. Thule was 53 out of 95. Pass rush efficiency, Bud, 83 out of 94. Thule, 47th out of 94. So he was the better pass rusher last year. I know that they think that they're going to be able to keep him in smaller bursts, and maybe he'll be better that way with Bud Dupree, and I'm sure they're going to get him out there as much as they can. I just don't know if it's at the expense of Tuli Tuipulotu, because that dude's projection and the kind of arc of his career right now is skyrocketing, and I don't think you want to stunt that development at all, because we know with those 3 guys, and if they're healthy, that's great. The good news is now with Bud Dupree, if you lose Joey Bosa, you still have a pretty gnarly 3-man pass rush that is going to cause a lot of havoc, even with Bud Dupree, Thule, and Mack on the field at the same time. And I think that's what's nice. Being able to send your edge rushers in waves, that's what's nice. Keeping them fresh is what's nice. Thule was already one of the best edge 3s in the league already. Now you get a dude who started a ton of games as your fourth best edge defender. That's money, and I love the move for the Chargers. But we did get to hear a little bit come out of Chargers rookie camp. It's exciting to see him on the field. And Jim Harbaugh is probably the most excited out of anybody. But also Junior Colson was standing out as well, but maybe not wearing the green dot right away. We're going to get into that and much more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First, I need to tell you guys about eBay Motors, though, because passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance with superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. David, we didn't get to see much out of Chargers rookie camp, but we did get to hear from some of the guys that were participating, and it was very interesting to hear Jim Harbaugh as he enters, some of his first practices as Chargers head coach, and just, hearing him at his press conference saying, like, I woke up at 3:30 in the morning, and I just realized, like, today's not today. Today is today, and just like, the random Jim Harbaugh
the
stuff that
weirdness
you're
of Jim
always going to get.
Harbaugh.
It's awesome,
Yeah.
but it was interesting just kind of hearing what he is trying to get out of rookie minicamp. What does he want these guys to learn? And basically what he said is, hey, nobody's winning a job right now. That's not what the point of this is, but it also doesn't mean that we're not getting some important things done.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think when you're sitting here, you want to make sure that you are taking these guys along the right way. You want to make it a gradual type of situation. You don't want them to be doing too much too soon. You want them to ramp up properly, because he said that you can't win anything here, but you definitely can lose it if somebody gets hurt, if they get injured, if somebody important goes down. That's the last thing that you want. So you want to make sure and do this the right pace and take them along, build them up the right way, so when it comes to some September and they're playing games for real, they're ready to roll.
I also thought it was just pretty candid when he said this. He said, I think we're going to have a really, really good chance, a fighting chance when Monday comes, that these rookies will be pretty close to up to speed and not slowing down the veterans on Monday. And I think that has a lot to do with why these rookie camps happen, because you don't want to have to stop your full practice with everything going on because you have guys that aren't caught up to speed yet. And you don't want to have to be explaining things to rookies while also not being able to give the veterans the time that they need in a new scheme and a new system to be able to make the progress that they need to do in this part of the season, right? So I think that is a huge part of it. It is an orientation of sorts. It is getting guys up to speed. But I thought it was interesting also, he said, about this class, they were really prepared. They've done a lot of homework, meetings, as good as any first day as you could hope for, farther ahead than what I was hoping for. And that is such a huge part of this, right? Like, as much as they can get done on the field really pales in comparison of all the things they need to do when they're not there and they're not in the facility. All the playbook that they have to, read front to back and know like the back of their hand, as Brenden Rice ended up putting in. We'll talk about that later. But like, he's saying they're picking it up fast, which I think is a great sign, because the faster these guys can pick it up, the faster they can get integrated and the faster they can become contributors and impact players on this team. And it's pretty much as simple as that. But it was also interesting kind of hearing where Jim Harbaugh stood on the guys in the draft, because he was saying basically that they got good value everywhere, and pretty much every player he thought they got basically 2 rounds after they should have got them.
Yeah, no, I mean, he was talking about, having the wide receivers that they got, Cornelius Johnson and Brenden Rice, had them, ranked as 3rd and 4th round players. Yeah. And so when they were still available there in the 6th and 7th round, or the 7th round, it was an automatic situation. They're like, it was a no-brainer. We had to take them there. And then Justin Aboigbe, they had him as a 2nd or 3rd round player. So, I mean, I think this circles back to a show we did about the blue star players. I think you're probably right, honestly, especially after hearing
about Aboigbe.
What Jim Harbaugh says about Aboigbe. I think he was for sure one of those blue star players that they were able to grab, a round later than they were expecting to be able to get him.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that was interesting about that is they basically said they had him and Junior Colson rated at the same exact level. They said basically they had a hard decision deciding which of those 2 guys they were going to go with, but then still ended up being able to find Justin Aboigbe a full round later than they took Junior Colson, which is awesome. And of course, you want to say these things, but I think what the other big thing here is just like Joe Hortiz's strategy of sticking to what their board was, staying true to their board, the ability to find talent, which Jim Harbaugh raved about, saying he's one of the best in the NFL at being able to find talent out there. And also, like, the reaches weren't reaches to them. Yeah. Even the ones that kind of didn't fit with what the consensus board was, even though a lot of those guys, they got great value, right? I mean, the consensus for Cornelius Johnson, for Brenden Rice was much, much lower than they ended up getting taken in the 7th round. They felt like, hey, this draft unfolded well for them. And I think the other big thing is they were able to find the value in the draft while also finding big, big needs. But as far as what rookie camp also brought, it was nice to hear that Junior Colson is picking things up quickly, maybe even too quickly, to the point where this is what Jim Harbaugh had to say about it. At one point, he said, somebody other than Junior answer the next question, right? It's like, Junior, we know you know the defense, right? We know you know. Maybe let's let some of these other guys answer some questions. He said, hey, it's been great. Junior, he knows the defense so well. Such an incredible thing. I'm not saying he's going to be wearing any dots or anything anytime soon. Probably not the first year. He's literally making all of the calls. He's making all the linebacker calls. He's making all the DB calls. Basically saying, hey, when the DBs are messing up the calls as they're trying to learn, he's the guy that's there to correct them. So he's saying that about the green dot, David, but like, he's also saying he's calling all the plays. This is rookie minicamp, right? So you don't have all the veterans and stuff out there right now. But I find it hard to believe that there's no chance that this is the dude that's wearing the green dot this year.
I know what Jim Harbaugh said. I don't believe it for a second. I'm sorry. It makes too much sense. We're talking about a player who was the green dot in the defense literally just last year. And he's already showing you that he knows what everybody's responsibilities are. He knows where they're supposed to be, where they're supposed to line up, and he's correcting everybody. So I don't see that changing when the veterans enter the building. Yeah. There's no way that any of those veteran players know the defense better than Junior Colson does. There's just not. So I know he's sitting here and saying that he's not going to be the green dot, but show me a more obvious choice. Show me a better choice at this point in time. I don't think there is one.
Yeah, it's usually a linebacker, right? So maybe you'd say, okay, well, Denzel Perriman, right? But he's now learning the system for the first time. Maybe Deion Henley, a guy that we think could be starting at linebacker next to Junior Colson.
Absolutely.
He's not going to know the defense better than Junior Colson. I mean, maybe he can get up to speed, but it's hard for me to imagine he's going to know it better. And then you could also say, hey, okay, maybe Derwin James, right? Someone we've seen do it in the past, history of calling plays for a Chargers defense. But the other thing about Derwin James is one of the main things we kind of want to see, and one of the things that they've touched on is letting him play more freely. Maybe
taking more off his plate.
In the same way that they've talked about Justin Herbert, right? Like with Derwin James, I think even more so than Justin Herbert. Like I think you just want him to play fast. Like Justin Herbert's a computer generated player. Like I mean, he just goes through things as quickly as he possibly
Justin Herbert's
can.
An AI.
But with Derwin James, like I think you saw what happened when they tried to make him wear too many hats, where he was a jack of all trades but a master of none. Yeah, is what ended up happening. Where you didn't see the special attributes of Derwin James standing out as consistently as an all-pro like Derwin James should. So I don't know if that's the option. And if you're talking about safeties, he's the guy that would make the most sense. It doesn't make sense for me for a Lohi Gilman to be calling plays. I don't know. It just seems like, hey, if Junior Colson is going to be out here starting on this defense from day one, which is something we both said we think is going to happen, I don't know. I feel like he's going to have the green dot. He's going to have a dot of some sorts, whatever color that is for this team. I think he's going to be out there with that dot on his helmet just because it makes the most sense. And when you're talking about trying to have a defense that's not giving up broken plays, like that was the thing with Brandon Staley, which is like everyone was trying to be so perfect all the time, and every coverage was trying to cover every play so perfectly that when one guy was out of place, bad things happened.
Well, and you could see it on tape too. You could see when people were out of position, right? It was
with the leverages obvious. And everything. Yeah, I mean, it was too much. And like when you need 11 guys to be perfect on every play, and one guy not being perfect is going to lead to a 40-yard gain, that's a problem, right? But having someone like Junior Colson that's there to make sure everyone is lined up correctly, to make sure all the calls are coming in correctly, I think is just too valuable of a kind of commodity for the Chargers to pass up on when they have this dude who's been in this defense under Jesse Minter. But we did get to hear from all of the wide receivers, all the rookies at least, that were at Chargers rookie camp. And I think it was most interesting hearing from Brenden Rice talking about not only why he thinks he can make the team, but also why he's not trying to be his dad, and he knows that he's a much different type of receiver than Jerry Rice is. So we're going to talk about that and more on today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First, though, I do need to tell you guys about FanDuel because it's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. And that means you can pick the biggest favorites, even on the money line. And if you win, you get $150 in bonus bets. The other thing I love, same game parlays, especially for sports that I love less than I love football. It's nice getting in on some of the in-game, same-game parlays. Like tonight, you can go with the Celtics-Cavaliers game. You could take Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown to score 25+, and Donovan Mitchell to score 25+, and have 6+ assists, and get that at plus 610 odds. That's 6-1 on the money. So make sure you guys get in on the action, especially during this playoff season when it's at the height of its powers. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, David, well, let's talk about some of the other kind of press conferences that we got some good sound bites from, including the wide receivers, and it was very interesting hearing from the Chargers rookies. I mean, I don't think Loud McConkey gave anything more than like a 2-sentence answer for everything. Pretty kind of, white rice press conference,
Yeah,
for sure.
PR 101 there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was the Justin Herbert of wide receiver press conferences. But it was interesting to hear from Brenden Rice, especially because he is a guy that fell so much further than anyone thought he would. Also combined with the fact that he's Jerry Rice's son, who's now playing on the Chargers, which is pretty crazy. But make sure you guys are all checking out the Locked On Sports Today, first ever national 24/7 sports streaming channel that you can get everything around the sports world, getting it from local experts and their insight the way that only the local experts can give you. So make sure you guys go subscribe to Locked On Sports Today to check that out. But let's get to Brenden Rice, David, because hearing him talk, right, it feels like he knows what's on the table. He knows what's in front of him. He knows he's a 7th-round pick. But to me, it kind of seemed like he was talking about why he feels so confident in himself to make this team, because he knows it's not a given. And he said, this is what will separate him. My work ethic will separate myself. There are a lot of great guys in the room. We have a lot of different body types, different types of games. But if I can go ahead and do the little things each day in and day out, go ahead and prove myself, go ahead and know the playbook like the back of my hand, and also be attentive and do the extra little things, I think that I will continue to separate myself within this room. So that tells me he sees the path for him to make this roster, and he looks at this wide receiver room and says, okay, this is kind of where I can fit in. This is what I bring to the table that these other guys don't, which I think is a great way to look at trying to make this team as a 7th-round pick.
Absolutely. And I mean, hey, he's got eyeballs, right? He sees how many wide receivers the Chargers have brought in, right? There's only going to be a certain amount of spots, and he knows where he is in the pecking order, right? But he's the only one that can change that. You know, it's being the first one there, being the last one to leave, being able to create that chemistry with the quarterback, being able to make himself invaluable, right? He's going to have to do all of those things, but he knows that the opportunity is there, right? Competitors welcome. That's what Jim Harbaugh has said. He said it repeatedly. There's going to be a ton of competition at that wide receiver spot. It's going to be one of the fiercest battles in all of training camp for the Chargers this offseason.
Yeah, there's 11 guys. I mean, 11. He was talking even after DJ Chark had already signed that contract. So that's another veteran that you have to think, hey, probably slides in ahead of him.
Yeah,
on the depth chart. And maybe not a sure thing to make the roster, but I mean, feels like a pretty sure thing with DJ Chark. I mean, almost $3 million. Wouldn't cost him that much, but still. I mean, they signed him for a reason. It was also interesting, though, kind of hearing him talk about his game in contrast with his dad's, because, I mean, that's what the comparison is always going to be.
Of course.
Is, you know, hey, are you your dad? Obviously, we know from his college production, he wasn't producing like the, you know, potentially arguably the greatest receiver of all time. But this is what he had to say about it when asked. He said, the thing is, we have two different body types. He was a smooth route runner, not the most physical guy, I feel. So we both have the top end speed with the burners, the little start and stop. We'll see on Sundays. But I feel as though for me, I model my game after the bigger types of receivers, the Devontae Adams, the Calvin Ridleys more so, or even Mike Evans. Being able to just go ahead, be physical at the top of the route, create separation, or go up and make a jump ball. Those are the type of plays, and be consistent for my quarterback as well. So I thought it was very interesting, David, and I thought very enlightening, where it's like he knows the pressure that comes along with that, and it must be immense. But he also knows that he has to play to his strengths, and he can't go try to be Jerry Rice, because it's just not going to happen.
Oh, yeah. I mean, my goodness, what gigantic shoes to have to, what a shadow, right? I mean, what a shadow.
Yeah, it's like
to
Michael
be
Jordan's
under.
kid, you know what I mean, playing basketball.
It's awful. But I think it's funny how he says he's not like he's a different type of like body type. I mean, not really. I mean, Jerry Rice was 6'2", 200. He's 6'2", 208. I mean, he's a little bit faster than his dad. His dad ran a 4.7. He ran a 4.5. But he's talking about in the way that he plays, right? You know,
yeah, I mean,
more
he's
of a
noticeably
contested catch
thicker
guy.
just by looking at him. You know what I mean? He's definitely a thicker dude for sure. But I think it's about how they play, right? Because Jerry Rice's game wasn't a physical type of game for sure.
Right. He's saying, hey, I don't mind getting physical with these defensive backs, creating separation with that physicality, going up and getting the football, getting those contested catches, and being somebody who's going to be reliable for his quarterback. A guy that, you know, when you need to go make a play, just like Mike Williams, right? When the game's on the line and you need to go up and get the football, make a play, keep the game alive for your team. Brenden Rice is saying, call on me. I'm the type of guy that can do that for you.
And I think the great thing about him is, like, you can tell he's Jerry Rice's son in some ways, just the way he plays, right? The way he goes to high point the football, you know, just kind of the football IQ he kind of carries himself with, and the way he kind of plays, like the nuances of his route running and things like that. It's like, okay, yeah, you definitely grew up on a football field, you know, watching Jerry Rice out there with all the guys that he was playing with. But I think it's smart, you know, play to your own strengths.
Oh, yeah.
He should be playing like some of those big wide receivers. And those guys he's talking about, you know, especially Devontae Adams, Calvin Ridley's, like even Keenan Allen to a certain extent, right? Those are all guys that were very good route runners for their sizes. Mike Evans a little less so, but still, I mean, Mike Evans has been dominant most, 1,000-yard seasons everyone's ever put together.
Yeah.
And he's not the contested catch guy that Mike Evans is. But if he can be somewhere in between those guys and find that mold and also get the trust of Justin Herbert like he's talking about, he'll definitely make this team. And the other thing he talked about too was just like, hey, I also know that I'm coming to a Jim Harbaugh football team, and that means coming with a certain level of physicality. And I know that, and I think that's a message to everyone where it's like, hey, you have to have that physicality. You have to be able to block. You have to be able to do all these things, or you're not getting on the field. And it was interesting hearing Cornelius Johnson, because he was a guy that Chad Alexander, the Chargers assistant general manager, said was the best blocking receiver in the draft. And they Chargers got him, and this is what he had to say about why it's so important for him to be able to block. There are going to be certain scenarios where receivers are put in a position where they have a pivotal block to spring a run. You think he's just blocking the corner like corners and DBs on receivers, but it could actually be a receiver that goes out and takes out a linebacker, or even getting an edge, or take out the safety, something like that. You have to know schematically that could help the team win a game. And also just said it's not just about running routes, being a wide receiver. So it's nice that he kind of sees that, David, because that is the route, the pathway for Cornelius Johnson. Being a special team player, but also being the best run blocker on the team, that's a great way to kind of make your case to put your best foot forward to trying to make a loaded wide receiver room, or at least a very, very crowded wide receiver room.
Well, and I just love the detail there, how sophisticated it is, how really specific it is, run blocking. It's not just, hey, block the defensive back in front of you. It's, hey, sometimes I'm going to have to go pick off this linebacker in this spot, or I'm going to have to go take out this safety in order to make this run play successful. I mean, I think a lot of people, a lot of times forget there's so many different elements to run blocking. It's not just your offensive line. It's your tight ends. It's your wide receivers. It's everybody all working in concert together to be able to go make a successful play. Those big runs where they rip off 30, 40, 50-yard runs, it's because everybody did their job on the field at the same time.
Yeah, there was that run against the Rams. I think it was 2 years ago, where just everybody, was the long Austin Eckler touchdown against the Rams, where just everybody hit their block.
Yep.
And it was so perfect. It was like poetry in motion. But the other thing is, having a guy like Cornelius Johnson on the field makes you draw up plays differently, right?
Yeah.
Like you can draw up a running play and expect him to be able to get across the field and cut off a safety to really kind of spring a big run. If you don't have guys that can do that, you can't make those plays, or those plays just aren't going to work. And it just goes to what we've talked about for so long, where the bad running game for the Chargers goes so much further than the running backs, than the offensive line. It's the tight ends. It's the wide receivers, all of those things. And with this new regime, you feel like you're going to get better out of those positions. You're going to get better out of the tight ends. You're going to get better out of the wide receivers, but it also means bringing in different types of wide receivers. And I think this is also a loud call to the rest of this wide receiver room, the Quentin Johnstons, the Joshua Palmers. You better be able to block. You better get out there and take your blocking game up to another level. I'm not, and condemning those guys for what they did in the past. We're saying they're terrible run blockers, but it's not optional anymore.
Right.
You better go out there and you better go block, because if not, Greg Roman's not the type of offensive coordinator that's going to keep you on the field, and your snaps are going to go down. You're going to be lower on the pecking order, because it's not just about being a receiver that catches the football anymore. It's about being a well-rounded receiver, and that's what Brenden Rice and Cornelius Johnson bring to the table and why they have a chance to make this roster. But that's going to wrap things up for today's show. Make sure you guys check back in tomorrow for Chargers buy or sell, getting into the biggest storylines and overreactions. You can also hit us up at Locked On LAC, where not only we post the show, but also you can put your buy or sells in for tomorrow's show. So make sure you guys do that. And you can also find the show every day on our other social media at Locked On Chargers on Instagram and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page, as well as on our personal accounts for me at Dan Talk Sports on Twitter and David at Dro Talk SD. To make sure you never miss the show, though, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. But that's going to do it for us today. Make sure you guys hit us up for buy or sells. You can even call into the voicemail line at 323-524-7924. But we'll be back with you guys tomorrow. Until then, take it easy and go Bolts.